For over 30 years, Progressive Dairy has been bringing dairy producers forward-thinking articles about new facilities, new products, and new methods.
What began as an 8-page flyer in 1987, serving the dairy producers of Idaho, Progressive Dairy magazine has grown into a national and international publication serving the dairy industry across North America.
From the beginning, Progressive Dairy has been provided as a free publication to dairy producers and continues that way today.
Progressive Dairy has always been provided free with the support of advertisers who promote their products and services on the pages of our magazine. Our advertisers trust that we are delivering Progressive Dairy to the right audience. You can help us maintain that trust with our advertisers.
We invite you, our reader, to make sure you request and renew your free subscription to Progressive Dairy once every 2 years to help us keep your information up to date and to ensure that you will continue to receive Progressive Dairy for many years to come.
How will you know if you need to renew your subscription? It's actually really simple. Here, let me show you. For print magazines, on the front cover of each issue, right above your mailing address, you will find your customer ID number. When we need to hear from you, the message, "Time to renew," will be printed after that number. If you don't update your subscription at that time, the text will then change to read, "This could be your last issue, and you could be removed from the mail list if you don't take time to renew." So be sure you don't miss an issue by watching for those messages on your mailing label on the front cover and reach out to us to renew.
Is there anyone else working on your farm or ranch that should have a free subscription? Let us know their information or pass this along, and we'll get them signed up for free as well.
Renew your subscription online at progressivedairy.com or call us at 208-324-7513 to speak with one of our team members. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and our podcast for the latest information about the dairy industry.
Ameliacor is proud to be the exclusive sponsor of this episode of Real Producer Exchange. Ameliacor is the company that brings you DHI Plus, Easy Feed, and Easy Weights. Trusted tools that help dairy producers confidently manage herd and feed data. From the parlor to the feed center, Ameliacor connects your data across every part of the operation. Our local-first cloud sync design means even when the internet isn't dependable, your data stays safe and accessible. Easy Feed keeps rations precise and inventories accurate. Easy Weights tracks commodity and harvest loads to the ton. DHI Plus helps you see the full picture of cow health, reproduction, and milk production, all in one place. Whether you manage hundreds or thousands of cows, Ameliacor helps you make data-driven decisions that improve consistency, efficiency, and profitability. Learn more at ameliacor.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Producer Exchange. My name is Scott Sorrell, Director of Global Marketing for Balchem Animal Nutrition and Health, and I'm thrilled to be a part of this Real Producer webinar where we connect with dairy producers worldwide, diving into their unique challenges, opportunities, and lessons learned. Before we dive in, let's get started by introducing today's moderator, Mr. Walt Cooley. Walt, great to see you. He's a seasoned editor for Progressive Dairy magazine with deep expertise in all things dairy. Welcome, Walt. If you wouldn't mind, would you introduce our guest for us?
Sure. Thanks, Scott. It's great to be here today and really excited about this. We've been putting this together for a couple weeks now, and so we're ready to introduce our guest. I'd like to welcome Greg Nye to the Real Producer Exchange. Greg manages Mountain View Dairy, where he and his team feed nearly 10,000 animals. That includes 4,750 milking cows. Like many other dairy producers, he has his own successes and struggles as he manages that many animals. I like that this is a real producer exchange. Was calling Greg last night, make sure everything's good, and he was pulling a dead tractor off the side of the road. So he has his same struggles just like everybody else. But he's here to share these things with us today, especially about their 5,700 square foot indoor feed handling center. And we've gone out, taken some videos. You're going to get to see an inside look at what that feed center looks like today. Greg, before I say too much, why don't you start off by giving us a quick rundown of your operation, and then we can dive into a bit more of the specifics.
So we're located in Delta, Utah, which is kind of the last jumping off point before you head west into the state of Nevada. We're milking at 4,750 is probably a year average, 4,750 animals across 3 facilities. Rolling herd average is 88 pounds. We run a little higher in the summer, a little lower in the winter. Components are running really well, and with the feed center specifically, between young stock and adult animals, we are feeding about 10,000 head. And there's quite a bit that went into the feed center, but I guess we'll get into that as we go along.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg, for joining us today. And we're going to go ahead and play a little intro. You get to see just exactly where Delta, Utah is. There's some video capture here and get a sense of where Greg is dairying at. So let's cue up the first video, if you would, please.
Greg Nye with Mountain View Dairy. I am the operations manager for all 3 of our facilities and our farm ground. So this facility is a fully enclosed feed center. We started design on it in 2018, broke ground in 2020, took a year off because of COVID, moved in November of 2022. So we've been processing feed in here for not quite 3 years today. So with this facility, our 3 biggest benefits with it were certainly shrink loss, ration consistency, and also safety for our employees and deliveries. So this facility is kind of divided up into 4 separate zones. So where we're standing right now on the main feed floor is where all of our raw ingredients are housed for forages, and then also all of our concentrates that we do in-house premixes with. But everything is received externally. And so on this floor, we only ever have a single wheel loader running. And between the grain leg and our elevated door unloads, we never have a truck on the floor in the normal course of operation. The loader and the delivery truck are never running in the same line of traffic, and then all deliveries are external. So there's never any crossing traffic when we're receiving commodities or feeding.
Talk a little bit about that back of the napkin moment. You know, you were talking specifically in that video about trying to keep traffic flows so you didn't have feed trucks in the same spot as loaders, and safety, as well as some efficiency related things. So what was the back of the napkin moment to even conceive?
So on that piece with our original feed center, and that same fly that was messing with us the day we did that video, he's back again. But the one of the challenges that we had with our old feed center, because part of it was we'd outgrown it so much, but we had to be taking deliveries while we were feeding, and just due to the layout of it, when we had a delivery truck in a bay, we couldn't get into that bay, and it also blocked traffic to the mobile mixers. And so when we were laying this out, one of our goals was to keep all lines of traffic completely separated, for employee safety, but also for efficiency. Because I mean, a truck coming in, unloading, getting out of the way, that was costing us, 15 or 20 minutes a load by X number of loads a day. And so we were losing a lot of time to that. And that was one of the driving design concerns on this, was how to keep that traffic flow separated so that so everything could move as efficiently as possible.
Thanks for explaining that. Let's go ahead and play the next video. We'll talk a little bit about this receiving feeds. You'll be able to see a little bit more about how the feeds come in to this feed center, and a little bit more expanded view of what's inside.
Got going on here is again trying to keep deliveries out of the line of feeding traffic. On the east side of this facility, we have a truck unload. So just like you would see at a grain elevator, everything's unloaded off that elevator, and we've got about 130,000 bushels of shell corn storage outside. So whole corn goes in that, and then the rest of our commodities come through a drop leg into a conveyor system that has doors that open into each one of the individual bays down here. And so we can take a product right off the rail across the scales and deliver it into a bay where we're only going to handle it once until we're processing it. But each one of these bays will hold a minimum of 100 tons of any given commodity. Some of the denser products, we can certainly put more than that in, but if we fill the capacity, we can operate as a standalone for about a month on deliveries, which never ever happens, but. So on this side of the facility, you can see behind us, there's overhead doors above each one of the bays. And so on the west side of this facility, there's a ramp down to, for what it is, natural ground level. So when we have deliveries coming in on this side of the facility, we can open the door and a truck backs up. There is a curb stop there. So when the trailer hits the curb stop, the tail end of the trailer is actually hanging into the bay, and we can just unload right over the wall. And these bays are a little bit smaller because we're turning these products over faster, where it's our, especially our forages, but they can receive without ever interrupting feeding or anything that's going on in here. So in this facility, because we're both batching feed to deliver to animals and we're doing our own premix rations here, the way things are laid out is our high use ingredients that are going to go into pretty much every load of feed we're going to deliver are all up towards the front of the facility where the mixers are. So we've got dry hay, corn silage, small grains, a grain premix, and then ground corn up here in the front. So just trying to keep our cycle time short so that we can deliver feed as quickly and effectively as we can. And then our premixes, when we're not trying to put feed in front of animals, those are longer runs down this facility when we're not in a time crunch to get animals fed, and we've got time to take those longer runs. So with the board, we've got just a general overview of the facility. And so we do write what ingredient we have in what bin, because one of our goals is that we've always got an empty bin. And so, for instance, just because soy hulls is in bin 19 right now, the next time we get a delivery, it might not be going to bin 19. We may be putting it in 24 or any of the other bins on that side, with the idea that we're weighing everything into the bay. And then when the bay is empty, that's how we can zero out that ingredient and be able to track our shrink on it. And so we don't always accomplish it, but the goal is to have an empty bin so that we're always rotating stuff around so we can keep our inventory fresh and so that we can track how our shrink efficiency is going. So processing feed is very simple. I mean, we need to load raw ingredients into a mixer tub, process it to actually those soy hulls that we saw coming in. And so we've got it set up so that for these guys, because I mean, there's 4 or 5 different conveyors you have to start. There's half a dozen slide gates that have to be set properly. But I mean, right now we've got it down to about 3 buttons that you have to hit. I mean, the feed processing side, we've got dialed right in. The receiving side of it, there's still a little bit of cleaning up to do. Unloading, we've been inside the facility. We've seen the conveyor system inside. So what we have outside to bring all those commodities in is we've got an elevated truck unload right here. And so belt trailers and hopper bottoms can both unload into this conveyor. And so we drop into the conveyor, and that feeds a twin elevator complex that's actually right behind us here. And we've got 2 belt elevators going up in the air, and so shell corn is stored externally in the corn bins that are just out of picture here. And then we also have the option to drop into the facility for everything that's not corn. We do grind all of our corn on site. We've been doing that for just about 10 years. And so the way that we have this system set up right now, we can actually pull corn back out of our storage bins and feed into the corn grinder that's just here over on my left, or on my right, excuse me. So we can drop into the nurse hopper and grind corn straight into the facility. And so corn is one of the products that we used to handle 6 or 7 times before we ever got it in a mixer wagon. And now we handle it once.
Great. I really like that video because it shows both the inside and the outside, Greg, of this new facility, which is just amazing to see in person. So thank you for sharing with us. Talk a little bit about that corn, if you would, for example. I think that's a good commodity where you were touching it multiple different times. And part of the goal here was to decrease the number of touches on a commodity before it actually got in a ration.
And so that all plays back into, the efficiency and also the shrink piece. Anytime you handle an ingredient, no matter what it is, you're going to lose a little bit of it. And so with the way that we were storing stuff, because we primarily take deliveries off of a local rail spur here in town. So we're bringing ingredients in pretty much 100 tons at a time. We didn't have that available storage capacity in our old feed center. And so we were storing some of it off site, some of it on site, but not in the feed center itself. So we're loading, unloading, reloading. That takes wheel loaders. It takes trucks. So it's man hours, it's fuel, it's time. In addition to, I don't care if you run a broom across the floor, every time you move an ingredient, you're going to lose a little bit of it. And at least in our operation, feed is our single largest expense. And so it should require a lot of the focus. And so with the advent of this system, we took that handling down to, we take it off the rail car and it goes either into the shell corn bins or into one of the bays inside. And at that point, it's in a controlled environment. There's no weather, no wind. So we have a lot more control over that ingredient. And instead of having to unload it, reload it, move it around, everything just goes to, it's pretty much a single or 2 touch until we've got it in a mixer and in front of a cow.
Greg, the audience might be interested in that story that you told me while we were visiting in person about the rail. You could see the railroad from your property line, and you're like, "Hey, why don't you just put a little rail spur right up here to this facility?" Tell the audience about that.
Yeah, that was a really good idea that sort of failed. So where this facility is located, there's a 2-track spur or 2-track main that runs, maybe a mile line of sight on the east side of this facility. And I approached the railroad about, can we just bring a rail spur in, and instead of having to run trucks and everything else, we'll do a spur unload. And they were willing to look at it. And we run a couple hundred cars a year. And they said for the low price of $18 million, they would be more than willing to bring a rail spur in. And so we decided that maybe town wasn't all that far away and we could just run trucks instead.
You get a lot of trucks and trailers for $18 million.
Yeah.
Very good. Talk to the audience a little bit about, you said that facility can hold up to a month's worth of feed if you needed it to. You're kind of like your own warehouse, right?
That's kind of the design intent. So where we're located, Utah's not a dairy state to begin with. I think we rank 47th or 8th in total dairy cows. You would probably know that number better than I do. But for the ingredients that we're using, we do feed all non-GMO ingredients. There was nobody local that was willing to warehouse those ingredients for us. And so part of the design intent of this was to be able to warehouse our own ingredients, and also taking the long view of, things that we've seen in the last 5 years, rail strikes, other challenges in sourcing ingredients, stuff like that. We tried to build in the capacity so that we can carry a lot of on-hand inventory so that we don't have to worry about running out of ingredients.
Very good. Okay, I'd like to pause here and remind the audience, if you have questions for Greg about anything you've seen in the videos or anything about how he's operating his feed center, feel free to put those in the chat, and we will get to them during the Q&A portion. It'll be coming up here in about 15 or 20 minutes. Okay, let's go to the next video about mixing rations.
The actual processing part of this is pretty straightforward, and we're using traditional twin screw stationary mixers. Everything that we're doing as far as inventory management is a two-part piece, and we're using Amelicor's easy weights and easy feed programs. And so everything that's coming in here comes in across our scale, gets recorded into inventory with a location through, either the grain silos or the different bins. And then as we process feed, all of our rations are run through easy feed. And so that is, that's the batch ratios for our rations, how much of which ingredient, tracking our inaccuracies there, and also removing that feed from inventory. And so that piece of it is pretty straightforward. Out here are a standalone operation. We take care of maintenance in the facility and any breakdowns or repairs. But because my service team isn't necessarily in this facility every single day, the cameras are set up looking directly down into both mixer tubs. And so from the office or even a cell phone, if you wanted, we can pull up a mixer tub, see if it's mixing, and truthfully off those cameras, we can't take it down to a granular level, but we can see how well those mixers are blending without having to get up on top of them and look inside them. One challenge that luckily we foresaw before we moved in here, it was included in the original design, but bringing commodities in, we've got a 16-foot drop to the floor, so that does generate some dust. But the bulk of the dust generated in a processing facility is right on top of the mixer tubs. And so we've got a bag house collection system like you'd see on any sort of industrial complex that's doing processing outside the facility, and the collector hoods are mounted right above the mixers where we do generate the bulk of our dust. So there is an updraft right there, and as we're loading, it's with the doors open, it's not perfect. We're about 80% dust capture, but then that dust, as we've collected it, we've actually run samples of it, and it's primarily hay and grain dust, so we dump it right back into our premix ration and run it through again. So shrink was one of our biggest challenges, especially being in the Intermountain West where the wind blows a lot, and warehousing the bulk of our commodities. We were storing everything in traditional three-sided feed storage facilities and a little bit outside on a concrete pad, and so we had a little bit of weather damage from rain. But specifically wind and animal damage. And our best shot at it when we were putting this facility together is we were running about 7.5 to 8% shrink, and moving into this facility, we cut that to consistently 2%. So with liquid adds in this system, we do have an internal tank farm over here to my left. And so we've got water storage, and then we've got 24,000 gallons of storage for liquid molasses, another 24,000 gallons of storage for whey. And much like everything else in this facility, there's external hookups on the facility. So our molasses trucks and our whey trucks that are delivering product can hook up outside, pump in overhead. Water's brought in off one of our main water lines. And then off to my right, I don't know how well it's going to show up, but we've got a whole pump and pipe network over here. And so everything's pumped directly into the mixers and controlled from the cab of the loader.
All right. I think a lot of people will be interested in that video there with the mixing process. Greg, talk a little bit about, this is the Real Producer Exchange. So that dust collection system is pretty unique and innovative for a facility like this. Like you said, it's not uncommon to have them if you're processing fine materials, but you said that, you don't have a lot of humidity there in Delta, but sometimes during changes in the season, humidity can play a little role in that dust collection. Talk about some things you've learned as you've tried to collect that dust.
So the system itself, I mean, you saw it when you were on site. I mean, it's pretty much a big vacuum cleaner. And we did learn that humidity will affect it, especially in the winter months. We struggle a little more with filter plugging just because the additional humidity in the atmosphere. The system itself is mostly self-maintaining, other than unloading the collected dust out of its bins. But the biggest challenge that we've had with it, truthfully, is when we designed this system, we designed it for the feed center to be operated with the doors closed all the time. And so our free air or makeup air to build a negative pressure system. It does turn out that feeders they're kind of like children, and you tell them keep the doors shut and they'd rather have the doors open. And so it's not quite as effective as we'd hoped it would be, but it's the days that it's down for maintenance or we do have an issue with it, you can certainly tell when that system isn't running. It's just the dust load in the atmosphere in there is significantly heavier.
Greg, is there any kind of long-term, maintenance you might have to do? Like, obviously it's a feed center and it's definitely not white glove by any means, but you're capturing a lot of dust. At some point in time, you've operated it for 3 years. Would there have to be any kind of deep cleaning or any of that kind of thing that you anticipate over the long haul?
So with the overall facility, we do go through every 6 months with an industrial air compressor and a man lift, kind of start at the rafters, blow everything down to ground level, and physically clean everything that way. The feeders, as they're at the end of their shifts, they do, they clean the floors, sweep the alleyways, that kind of stuff. The bag house itself, the biggest maintenance piece on that is, and we're still on the front end of this whole operation. We're just over 3 years into it right now. The air filters on the bag house we have had to replace once. So we're looking at about a 2-year lifespan on them. And then all the mechanical stuff in it, the mixer tubs, the conveyor, stuff like that, we have scheduled inspections on them. And then as needed, we do down that equipment for maintenance or repair.
Very good. Well, let's play the next section here called Delivering Rations and talk about how we get them out of the mixer tubs to in front of cows.
So the way this is set up, the two stationary mixers can both feed this big conveyor that's in the shop, and that conveyor will hold, a full load of whatever ration we're doing. We've learned that its capacity is about 45,000 pounds. Our typical rations aren't that heavy, so we can actually have 4 loads going at any given point in time. One staged on the conveyor, one that's finishing processing, one that we're loading, and then one being delivered. And the delivery box that's down here has no mixing capabilities, so it's just like a big chuck wagon kind of a thing. So it's got a front discharge on it. It is pulled by a semi truck, but it's got its own power pack on it, so the trailer itself is completely self-contained, and the truck is just a prime mover. So when the delivery truck comes back, it takes about 2 minutes to load a full load of feed on, refresh the software on his tablet so he knows what pens he's going to, and be gone again. But the delivery box does have 4 cameras set up on it, so they've got both sides and rear view, and then one that's directly into it so they can see how it's loading.
Greg, talk a little bit about, to the audience, if you would, just designing this system. I mean, loading feed into tubs. You mentioned that that's kind of a standard procedure for many dairies, but now we're talking about getting feed out of these tubs into some kind of wagon and then in front of cows. So this is really where I think the innovative part of what you guys have done on your dairy is started there. So talk a little bit about first that elevator, how it's custom built, unique.
So And truthfully, that piece of the system is it's probably the piece that was the most challenging out of the entire operation. That ties into this. One of the most valuable things that we have as producers in the dairy industry, at least according to my father, and I've kind of adopted his mantra, is R&D, which if you're outside of our industry would be research and development, but quite truthfully is rob and duplicate. And so as we were designing this facility, we looked at different material handling operations. We looked at bulk moving, batch plants, kind of all across the country in different design concepts, and kind of put everything into one bag for this. The one interesting thing that we found was almost in our backyard, about an hour and a half up the road. There was a dairy that had been using stationary mixers and had put a big feed conveyor in place because the location of the mixers, they couldn't get trucks in and out. And so they actually kind of piloted the staging feed piece, and we took that back to our operation because it does allow us to stage pretty much 4 loads of feed at any given point in time. We can be delivering one, have one sitting on the conveyor, one that's finishing processing, and one being loaded. And so taking that concept, and we refined it a little bit to fit the scale of what we were doing, just added an incredible amount of efficiency to it. And the delivery box was a challenge. My initial design on that, I tried to do like the option to unload off both sides, some stuff like that, just to make travel paths a little more efficient. We had some significant challenges with that piece. And I mean, when we started this facility up, quite truthfully, we were able to process feed. We got a load of feed onto the conveyor. We got it onto that delivery box, and then we couldn't get it back off the delivery box again. And so there were certainly some challenges the first 6 or 8 months as we were refining a bunch of that stuff. But today it works really well. Certainly credit to Lowen Manufacturing on that one, because I took pretty much a sketch on a napkin to them and said, "This is what I want to do. What can we do?" And I mean, they came back with solutions. And as we worked through some of my design issues and stuff, they worked through the whole thing with us and made it work.
Let's play the next video here. Greg, I'll have you talk over. There's no sound here. It's just the video, but we're going to look at this wagon and have you talk. So we'll start playing it and we'll unmute our mics so we can chat through it. Greg, if you would talk about, the power pack that's on here, and then some of those modifications you've made to be able to make this delivery system work.
Okay. So the layout of the box is, physically is pretty much the way that it was delivered to us. One big unknown that we had was whether we wanted to pull it with a tractor or with a semi truck. And so both of these delivery boxes, we have 2 of them. One's in our fab shop right now, getting updated to what I'm calling version 2.0 on it. But where the 5th wheel plate is on the truck, we had a drawbar that bolted onto it so that it could be drawn with a tractor. It was powered off the tractor's hydraulics. And the biggest challenge that we ran into there is that a tractor couldn't cycle fast enough to keep up with the speed that we can process feed at. And so we thought about it in the initial design, but we wanted to stick with tractors for delivery. And as we got into it, we started coming up with a lot of the shortcomings with tractor drawn equipment. So the second feed box, we took the original undercarriage out from underneath it, put a air ride suspension under it like you'd see on any over the road semi trailer. Worked with another vendor that we've been pretty close with to develop the power pack that's on it. So the trailer itself has a 60 horse diesel engine with a hydraulic power unit hooked to it. And then the screenshot you saw of the cab of the truck, we've got a scale monitor the easy feed monitor, and then also a control system for the power pack itself. So the trucks are the bigger issue in this. The trailer itself is pretty reliable, but semi trucks running off road do have probably more breakdowns than we'd like to see. But the truck is just a standalone unit. We're not using a PTO. We're not using anything off the truck other than it is a prime mover. And that piece is getting the kinks worked out of that big conveyor, and then refining the delivery box to where we want it. Mechanically, those were probably the two biggest challenges that we saw in this facility.
Yeah, and I don't know if you mentioned, Greg, but talk about how this elevator is driven, or was initially driven, but now how you're going to switch over to a different drive for it.
So the elevator is hydraulic drive, and the hydraulic drive side of it is not a big deal, other than conveyors are designed to be started empty, loaded, and then theoretically shut off empty. And as we're metering feed onto that conveyor, as we're loading and unloading it, 50% of its starts or better are loaded starts. And so we've had issues shearing the shaft on the drive motors. And so the last big update that we're doing, we actually have the components coming in for it, is we're going to switch over to an electric drive for that big conveyor. And so we're actually going to take the hydraulic pack and all of that out and switch over to a couple of 30 horse electric motors on a variable speed drive.
I think one of the things you had mentioned, Greg, was that unlike a parlor, there's no roadmap when you build one of these things. They're not so frequently used in the dairy industry that there's a blueprint of sorts. Explain how you got around that, and if someone's considering this, suggestions for how to try and build one when everyone's kind of custom.
And that piece is absolutely the truth. I mean, we all kind of take pride in our uniqueness, and the biggest piece of advice I'll give anybody, I don't care if it's a milking parlor, if it's a feed center, what it happens to be, is identify what your weak points are and focus on those as design points. And so, like you and I discussed, it was shrink, it was feed efficiency, it was the safety. And so as we were putting this whole thing together, those are things that we really focused on. And what we built was, from a design aspect, was probably our fifth major revision. You sketch something out on a piece of paper and look at how things are going to flow, how things are going to operate in it. And we scrapped a bunch of ideas, and then in the iteration that we built, we were making modifications right up on it. Right up until we were pouring footings for the concrete. And so it's really, being very open and honest with yourself. What are the challenges that we see with whatever this facility is, and how are we going to address them? And we had some phenomenal support from our feed nutritionist and other vendors, and even people, completely outside of the ag industry that were willing to offer some advice on it. Right down to our electrical supplier, that when I gave them the electrical layout for it, they said, there's a better way to do this. Why don't you do it this way? And so, not being afraid to ask the questions and really dig in, but it wasn't, it was not a one-off, here we go, this is what we're doing. There were a couple of years of background work in it before we ever started moving dirt for the project.
Greg, I'd also like you to speak to the thing we talked about. Okay, so you built it. What would you do different about it? And like most people, I think you said, if we just had built it a little bigger. Yep.
And that was, and there is a little bit of irony in that, because it's a 57,000 square foot facility. We can hold, a couple hundred tons of corn silage. We can hold a couple hundred tons of dry hay. any other ingredient. I mean, an absolute minimum of 100 tons, and just the way that deliveries happen, the way things ebb and flow, and changing ingredients as cost per ingredient changes. So we're going to drop one ingredient and add two to make up the difference on the ration balance. With all of that, 4 more bays on the end of it would be absolutely beautiful, and probably not enough.
Well, thanks for this introduction, Greg. We're going to head into our Q&A portion of the session now. So I'll bring Scott back in. Scott, can you tell us how this Q&A can work?
Yeah, exactly. All right. I want to thank you, gentlemen. Next, we're going to jump into the Q&A session with the audience, as Walt had said. I want to remind everybody that you can submit questions during the session using the Q&A tab, and then we'll be right back in just a few moments to answer those questions after this brief video. The economics of feeding Reassure precision release choline. Reassure is fed during the transition period, and because it's fed for such a short period of time, it costs just $15 per cow, and yet the benefits will continue to generate income throughout the year. Cows fed Reassure produce 5 pounds more colostrum, which pays for your Reassure investment on the very first day of lactation. Cows fed Reassure also produce 5 pounds more milk per day, every day. That means after the first day, every day is payday. Invest in Reassure during the transition period and recoup your investment on the very first day of lactation. After that, you got it, payday. All right. One more reminder, you can still submit those questions through the Q&A tab at the top of the screen. Walt, what's our first question?
Yeah, that's a good question here about the bucket loader, Greg. So does that loader stay inside the facility? Does it go out of the facility? And is there any kind of biosecurity you have to do if it's leaving the facility, to go pick up feed outs or any of that kind of stuff?
So the loader, and it depends a little bit on the time of year, honestly, and because we never have enough equipment. But it is primarily dedicated to the feed center, to that feed deck. If we don't have another machine available, it will leave the facility to go pick up refusals. But for the most part, it's running in that facility all the time. The one thing that we do, just because feeding is our highest hour application, and we're running 4 wheel loaders, about every 2 months, we will rotate one loader out and bring another machine in. But when that machine comes to the facility, it is power washed, cleaned up, so that when it hits that floor, we're not bringing in any, theoretically not bringing in any outside residue or anything. So primarily, it doesn't feed and then go to the corrals. It is dedicated to feeding for the time that it's there.
Good. Another question here, and you could tell the story about teaching your guys about fire prevention. So, you got very fine starches that are highly combustible in that form, and explain the story about teaching your guys about that, and then also what fire prevention technology is included in the facility in case something.
So, and the bag house does play into that, because feeding processing is a very high dust environment. So the bag house and the ventilation system were designed into the facility to try and mitigate as much of that dust as we can. And we were about 3 months into the facility, and I was explaining this to my service crew, that especially grain dust isn't just flammable; it can be explosive. And that turned into I walked out of the facility, and they were cleaning the bag house out, and they were building trails of grain dust and lighting them on fire to see exactly what happened. And that was a pretty good object lesson in what can happen on a very small scale. As far as fire mitigation of the facility, the biggest thing that we focus on is cleanliness. The cleaner that we keep the facility, the less likelihood of a fire happening. We do have fire extinguishers all over the facility, and our add water system is set up so that as long as we don't lose power, we can actually pull a hose right off of our 12,000 gallon storage tank there and use that for fire suppression as well. In the future, I'd like to go a little more industrial like you see in manufacturing complexes, but we have not gotten to that point yet.
Thank you. Yeah, talk about the specific savings, where you've seen savings, fuel, labor, shrink, and overall just the ROI. What does the return on that facility look like as far as build cost versus payoff?
So straight up facility ROI, that does change with commodity and forage prices, because if you're talking about 1% of shrink at $100 a ton or $200 a ton, obviously there's a difference in numbers there. But if you take the facility as a whole and the 3 years that we've been in there, and current commodity prices, we're on track for 4.5-year ROI on that facility right now. And certainly the largest part of that being feed shrink. If you cut anything from 7 or 8% to 2%, that's 5.5 or 6% savings right there. On our total ration cost. Fuel burn was a huge one that I expected to see some return on fuel burn, but we were running 2 mobile mixers on 250 horsepower tractors, 1 wheel loader, and moving into this facility and the wheel loader pretty much doing the same work that it was doing. We didn't see a huge change there, but going from 2 units delivering to 1 unit delivering and taking the PTO load, the major mechanical load off of it, and turning it into just mostly a prime mover. That was that was the $35,000 a month fuel savings right there. And as we've transitioned away from tractors into the semis, that fuel burns decreased a little bit beyond that, but that was a huge savings. Labor efficiencies, we've traditionally fed with 3 guys because we had 1 guy that was running feed over to our calf ranch. We actually made some modifications to our feeding program prior to moving into the facility that turned it into a 2-man operation, and we've maintained that all the way through. So not necessarily a labor savings, but certainly a labor efficiency there that's played out pretty well.
Kind of a follow-up related question, Greg, just talk a little bit more about tractors versus the semis and the trailers, like, the cost of a tractor for what you're getting versus, what you need it to do just to haul the feed, how you kind of pencil that out.
Can you repeat that, please? The video chopped out on me pretty hard there.
Yeah, sure. So explain your cost analysis between tractors and just semis for hauling. Everyone knows tractors aren't cheap these days for sure.
And that one truthfully was kind of a wing and a prayer. Because I am morally opposed to having anything permanently bolted to a semi because the truck is what always breaks down. But as we started to look at the repair and maintenance costs on a 250 horsepower tractor, which are, when you're putting a lot of miles, a lot of hours on them, the maintenance costs certainly go up with tires, with powertrain components, replacement costs. A low hour tractor in that realm right now is a $200,000 piece of equipment. I bought 3 $500,000 Peterbilts for $50,000 a piece. And we've been running those. We're coming right up on a year of running a delivery truck as opposed to a tractor. And so far the reliability's been there. But the maintenance and the replacement cost of it being, 25% of what a tractor is. If we do have issues with the trucks, I can throw a lot of trucks away for what 1 tractor costs. And the setup as you saw it, that entire setup with the power pack feed delivery box in the truck, pencils out just about the same as one tractor. So I think long term there is some potential there for some pretty good savings, but we're still in the infancy of that piece.
Okay. Yeah, talk a little bit about that cab too. It's air ride pressurized cab that the wheel loader has.
On the loader or the track or the feed delivery?
Is there any kind of suspension on either of those?
So the loader itself is a standard issue Cat 926 wheel loader. They do offer what they call high debris package for the cabin air filtration, which we started putting on our loaders prior to moving into the feed center, but it does a better job filtering particulate matter. I mean, it's designed for mining operations and stuff like that. That's been a pretty good one. The feed truck itself, I mean, outside of our hardware that we put in it, so the different monitors and stuff like that, really it's an off the street semi truck. I mean, we put a little more aggressive tires on it and built our own bracketing and everything to be able to hang all the monitors in it, but there's absolutely nothing special about the truck itself.
Scott, you have any questions for Greg you want to ask?
I think I'm pretty good shape here, Walt. It's been quite informative.
Very good. We probably have time for one more before we need to wrap up. Let's see here. Oh yeah, talk, Greg, about where you mentioned you R&D'd, robbed, and stole where you could. Where were you looking to rob and steal from?
So I missed the first half of that. My internet connection might be a little bit flaky. So I got the piece about where did we steal ideas from?
Yes.
But
yeah. Where did you look to steal ideas from where you could?
As much as I hate to admit it, and if any of my guys heard me, they'd chastise me. But I mean, certainly the internet. I mean, that's a phenomenal resource to look around and see, you know, what different dairy operations, what different industrial operations are using. I mean, you know, you start looking at industrial air reclamation, like for the bag house, stuff like that. Again, our feed nutritionist was an awesome resource because he travels and sees so many different dairies. We did have the opportunity, primarily thanks to YouTube, but we looked at like TLK up in Idaho, what they were doing with their big feed center that they built. Cargill had a small batch plant that had some really wild efficiencies with handling and batching ingredients that we looked at pretty closely. And then, I mean, certainly other dairies, you know, what's good, what's bad. Do you want stationary mixers? Do you want batch boxes? And so we took thoughts and working concepts from everywhere and then kind of added and subtracted until we got to something that we were comfortable with.
Very good. Well, for those who are going to stick around, we got a special treat. Scott, explain as we wrap up here. We promised everyone an hour. We'll stick to the hour. But if you're here live, there's a special treat. Scott, explain that for us.
All right. Thank you very much, Walt. And thank you, Greg. And thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. A recording of today's webinar will be available at the Real Producer Exchange YouTube channel. Just search the YouTube channel for Real Producers Exchange. You know, the other thing I wanted to mention is that we will have this content out on YouTube and on our websites, but there are these extra sessions like the one that we're just going to have. It's going to be exclusive to this audience. So you're going to want to make sure that you stick around for this exclusive content with Greg and his team. Our next producer exchange will take place on February 17th. You can register and check back for more details on that session at agproud.com/realproducer or by scanning the QR code on your screen. Be sure to check back as we add more details about the featured operation. Please stay tuned as well on this webinar for a deep dive into Mountain View Dairy Operations team and a few special guests. And so on behalf of Greg and his team, Walt and the teams from Balchem and Progressive Dairy, thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you again on February 17th.